now I'm back. And as I was saying, a lot of people put pause on their life for this campaign. And tonight you will see why we did. I stayed up until 5 watching the debates over in Italy, having and being around with everyone here working. We're working hard, so please, if you feel the same feeling that I felt all the way in Modena, please sign up, volunteer. We have 30 days. Let's make every single one of them count. Thank you very much, everybody.
All right, now that is true dedication coming from Italy back to Iowa. My goodness gracious. Hey, I'd like everybody to give a great big thank you to our host, who not only owns this particular property, but the one we're going to be going to, Mr. David Hazel. I know you're out there somewhere if you want to raise your hand. David, thank you, a Burlington native. I'd like to introduce you to another Burlington native, a young man who I admire much, who gave a speech that I personally thought was one of the best that I had heard in my life. Big defender of unions. My friend and your chair of Des Moines County Democrats, Mr. Tom Courtney, everyone.
Thanks, Al. You're all lucky I'm not going to give that speech tonight. It takes way too long. I also want to say I'm the co-chair of the Des Moines County Democrats, and Diane LaRue Chubb down here is the other co-chair. And also, like I say, my wife Nancy's that pretty blonde standing right there. Hey, you're all welcome. I'm glad you're all here tonight. This is a nice venue and a nice big crowd, and I'm told to hurry up because he's getting pretty close. But I want you all to listen to Andrew Yang. I believe, as Des Moines County Chair, I haven't picked a candidate, and I won't pick a candidate, and I don't think Diane has either, because we think you all should see and hear every candidate. If you'd have watched TV yesterday and today, you'd have thought this race was about over, but it's not about over. I think Andrew Yang's got a lot of good things to say, and I want to hear it. I know you're all anxious to hear it. So if he's here, Andrew Yang. Oh, wait. I have not personally met Andrew Yang, but I can tell you, she's not Andrew Yang, and she's a lot prettier than Andrew Yang. There you go.
Confuse us all the time. Okay. Hi everyone. Hello. Congratulations on this new office in Burlington. Thank you so much for all your work and support here. It's really been amazing to see this campaign just grow, and not just this campaign, but this movement. Gosh, I feel like I've been a little bit of a spectator, and I just only recently started joining Andrew on the trail because we have 2 little boys at home. But I really love being out here with him when I can, because I think that through me, people can see that Andrew is, in fact, a pretty normal person. And after being together now for almost 15 years, I'd like to think that I'm his best character witness. And if you know me, you know that I'm not the kind of wife to go around giving her husband false praise. I don't think that works out well for anyone. So I say this with 100% sincerity. Andrew is a wholesome family man of the highest integrity. He doesn't lie. I've never known him to do a single unscrupulous thing. But he's far from a stick in the mud, as you guys are well aware. He's so much fun, and he's flexible. He's always willing to learn, but he's principled. And he has exceptional judgment when it comes to the things that really matter. He is generous in heart and soul and in action. By the way, I took all of that from our wedding vows. Just kidding, our vows were way more generic. But all that aside, here's why I think Andrew Yang would be a great president. It is so upsetting how divided our nation has become. It's why Washington can't get anything done. Andrew's campaign message is humanity first. That includes all of us. He says all the time, it's not left, it's not right, it's forward. His intention was loud and clear from the very start. He's not here to play partisan politics. His goal will be to solve problems and improve the everyday lives of all Americans. Well, 15 years ago, I may not have thought to myself, oh, this man should be president. Today, the very same qualities that made me fall in love with him have made me absolutely convinced that Andrew Yang is the best person to lead this country in the 21st century. Because the stakes have never been higher. Americans right now know that things aren't all right. Too many people are being left behind. Too many families are struggling to make ends meet. We have women who are financially dependent and stuck in abusive situations. We have children who are hungry and homeless in the United States of America, a country with so much wealth. This shouldn't be acceptable to any one of us. Yet Andrew is the only candidate talking about poverty in any meaningful way. Of course, $1,000 a month isn't going to solve all our problems. We as a country have a lot of big systemic changes to work on. And if you look at any one of Andrew's 150 plus policy proposals, then you know that he fully intends to work on those. But the freedom dividend is a critical first step in the right direction. It will pave the road ahead and allow millions of Americans to lift their heads up, plan, save for a rainy day, and hope for a brighter future. That's why I so embrace this campaign and the work that Andrew is doing, putting humanity first. So now please join me in welcoming the next President of the United States, my husband, Andrew Yang.
Hello, Burlington, Iowa. How are you all? Why do I feel you're so far away? Is it these accursed TV cameras? Let's give my lovely wife Evelyn another round of applause. I know what you're thinking, Evelyn Yang 2020. No, that's what the team said. Or that they saw Evelyn in action, they were like, "Holy cow, Andrew!"
No, you missed it. At first they announced me as Andrew Yang.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, you could certainly not mistake us for each other.
I corrected that when I saw her.
Oh, thank you. It's a thrill to be back here in Iowa, and someone said this is our coolest campaign office in the entire state. And since this is my first time inside, I would have to say I agree. Yeah, how did this place become so cool? What did they do? You know what it is? There's the stage that I'm on. They're like the bird cages, the vintage posters, the art, the giant map. This feels like a nightclub / art gallery as much as a political headquarters. And I love it because this campaign's about a different vision for our country that's more human. Evelyn knows that I have never intended to run for president. And she jokes I'd make a lousy politician because I'm very bad at lying. I'm an entrepreneur and problem solver. I spent the last 7 years running a nonprofit that I started that helped create several thousand jobs around the country in Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Birmingham, Baltimore. And what I saw was that our economy is changing in fundamental ways that are leaving more and more of us behind. To me, this is one of the big reasons, if not the big reason, that Donald Trump's our president today. If you were to turn on cable news, why would you think that Donald Trump's our president?
Because of tweets.
Big mouth, social media, Russia, money.
Rain.
Well, it seemed to be working for him. racism, Hillary Clinton, emails, all mixed together.
Fear.
Fear. But I'm a numbers guy, and the numbers tell a clear and distinct story that we blasted away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were primarily based in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, and 40,000 right here in Iowa. I have been to those towns here in Iowa, and after the manufacturing plant closed, the shopping district closed, people started to leave, the schools started to shrink, and those communities never recovered. I saw that play out over and over again in Michigan, Ohio, Missouri. And if you doubt that this is what drove Donald Trump into the White House, there's a straight line up between the adoption of industrial automation in a voting area and the movement towards Trump in that area. And unfortunately, we're not stopping with the manufacturing jobs. How many of you have noticed stores closing where you work and live here in Burlington? And why are those stores closing? Amazon, that's right. Amazon soaking up $20 billion in business every single year. How much did Amazon pay in taxes last year? Zero. That is your math, Burlington. $20 billion out, zero back. 30% of your stores and malls closed for good. Most common job in your communities is retail clerk. Average retail clerk's a 39-year-old woman making between $8 and $10 an hour. What is her next opportunity when the store closes? How many of you have seen the self-serve kiosks in the CVS, the grocery store, the fast food store? Every McDonald's in the country will have one by next year. And they're now shifting to the back of the house with robot burger flippers and fry cookers. And it's not just the changes we can see in front of us every day. When you call the customer service line of a big company and you get the bot or software, you do the same thing I do, which is you pound 000, say human, 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 representative, representative, until you get someone on the line, right? How many of you do that? Oh yeah, we all do that because that software is terrible. Like just interacting with it, you're like, oh no. And so you breathe a sigh of relief when there's a human on the other line. But in 2 or 3 short years, the software is going to sound like this. Hey Andrew, how's it going? What can I do for you?
Yeah, that's right.
It'll be fast, seamless, delightful. You might not even know it's software. What is that going to mean for the 2.5 million Americans who work in call centers right now making $14 an hour?
Just become coders.
Yeah, maybe they'll learn to code. I love Joe, but he's dead wrong on that one. I mean, really. How many of you all know a truck driver here in Iowa? Trucking is the most common job in 29 states, 3.5 million truckers, and my friends in California are working on trucks that can drive themselves. A robot truck just transported 20 tons of butter from California to Pennsylvania without human intervention just 2 weeks ago. Why butter? I have no idea. But if you Google robot butter truck, the story will pop up. My friends in California say they are 98% of the way to self-driving trucks. What is that going to mean for the 3.5 million truck drivers here in Iowa and other parts of the country, or the 7 million? I hope they catch them. What is that going to mean for the truckers or the 7 million Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners that rely upon the truckers getting out and having a meal every day? How many of you have been to Iowa 80 in Davenport? Now, they say 5,000 people stop there every day. What will that number look like when the freight is driven by robots that don't need to stop and get a meal? We're in the midst of the greatest economic transformation in the history of our country, what experts are calling the Fourth Industrial Revolution. When's the last time you heard a politician say the words Fourth Industrial Revolution?
Right now.
Just now, 3 seconds ago.
Right now.
And I'm barely a politician, Iowa. I was unpacking all of these facts and figures and trends in 2017 after Donald Trump won. Because to me, his victory was a giant red flag. Now, you all and I have, and Evelyn has, family members, friends, and neighbors who celebrated Donald Trump's victory. After all, Donald Trump won Iowa by 8 points. So, of course, you have many friends who are happy about his winning. But to me, his victory was a giant red flag for our country, where tens of millions of our fellow Americans decided to take a bet on the narcissist reality TV star as our president. And so that, to me, required some real soul-searching and examination of how he got into the White House. And I saw these facts and figures with the fact that more and more of us are being left behind. And I took my facts and figures to our leaders in Washington, D.C. And I said to them, hey, we're going through the greatest economic transformation in our country's history. Immigrants are being scapegoated, though they have very little to do with the actual problems. What are we going to do to help our people and our communities through this time? And what do you think the folks in D.C. said to me when I said, what are we going to do?
You're laughing. An evil laugh. What?
The three big answers I got were these. Number one, we cannot talk about this, Andrew. Number two, we should study this further. Number three, we must educate and retrain all Americans for the jobs of the future. And I said, that sounds great, but I took a look at the studies. Do you all want to guess how effective government-funded retraining programs were for the manufacturing workers who lost their jobs? Yeah, someone here is Yang Gang. 0 to 15%. They're a total failure. The truth is that half of the manufacturing workers that lost their jobs never worked again. And of that group, half filed for disability. You then saw surges in suicides and drug overdoses in those communities to the point where our life expectancy has now declined for the last 3 years in a row. You know the last time America's life expectancy declined for 3 years in a row? The Spanish flu of 1918, a global pandemic that killed millions. You have to go back 100 years. In a developed country, it's highly unusual for our life expectancy ever to decline. It ordinarily just keeps going up because you're getting richer, stronger, healthier. That's the norm. But here in the United States, it's gone down and then down and then down again. This is how Donald Trump is our president, is that more and more of us are getting pushed aside. I love campaigning here in Iowa because you all have the future of the country in your hands. You're among some of the most powerful people in our nation today. I know it does not feel like it because you're just living your lives, doing your thing. It's a weekend, so there's a presidential candidate in town. But as one sign, go ahead and show with a sign of fingers how many presidential candidates you've seen this cycle. So this would be 5, 6, 10. More than 10, you can flash your fingers like this. So I saw a 15 there. He's at least 10. If you have a 1, I appreciate it because I'm just like, oh, I just feel like I'm the only person that brought you out. So, now, the reason why all of us come to you is because you have this outsized power on the direction our country takes. I have done the math. Do you know how many Californians each of you is worth? 1,000 Californians apiece. So look around this room tonight. How many of us are there? What's the fire code in my new office? I'm going to give a Trumpian estimate. There are 750 people here tonight. There are 140 people in this room. That alone would be almost 4 football stadiums worth of Californians. That is the power in this room tonight. The power to change the future of our country. Most of our fellow Americans look up and they see the government pipes clogged full of millions of dollars of lobbyist cash, and they despair that they can do nothing to change it. They are correct. They can do nothing to change it. You are the only people in the country who can change it. You are the only people in the country who can flush the pipes clean. Oh, I went to Washington, D.C., and I made this case to the folks, and they obviously did not have anything for me. And one person there said something to me that brought me here to you all tonight in Burlington. He said, Andrew, you're in the wrong town. No one here is going to do anything about this because Washington, D.C. is fundamentally a town of followers, not leaders. And the only way we will do anything about it is if you were to create a wave in other parts of the country and bring that wave crashing down on our heads. And I said, challenge accepted. I'll be back in 2 years with the wave. That was 2 years ago, Burlington. And I stand before you tonight. I am 5th in the polls and rising to be the Democratic nominee. We raised 16... Yes. Yeah, I love it too. We raised $16.5 million last quarter alone in increments of only $35 each. So my fans are almost as cheap as Bernie's. Zero corporate PAC money, all grassroots funding, all people-powered donations, $5, $10, $15. That is how we are going to take hold of DC and rewrite the rules to work for us, to work for you, to work for our families. Now, what does rewriting the rules mean? If you're here tonight, at some point you heard that someone is running for president who wants to give every American $1,000 a month. Remember that? Yep. How many of you heard that? Oh, yeah. And the first time you heard it, I know it sounded like a gimmick. It was too good to be true. It was not going to happen. But this is not my idea, and it's not a new idea. Thomas Paine was for it at the founding of the country. He called it the citizen's dividend for all Americans. Martin Luther King fought for this in the 1960s, and it is what he was fighting for when he was killed in 1968. I sat with his son in Atlanta, and he said that this is what his dad was fighting for. This was the vision his dad was fighting for when he was killed. 1,000 economists, including Milton Friedman, endorsed this in the 60s and 70s, and it was so mainstream it passed the U.S. House of Representatives twice in 1971 under Richard Nixon. Family assistance plan would guarantee a certain income level for all Americans. And then 11 years later, one state passed a dividend where now everyone in that state gets between $1,000 and $2,000 a year, no questions asked. And what state is that? And how do they pay for it? Oil. And what is the oil of the 21st century? Data, technology, AI, software, self-driving cars and trucks. A new study just came out that said that our data is now worth more than oil. How many of you saw that study? How many of you got your data check in the mail last month? Oh, we joke, we laugh, but if our data is now worth tens of billions of dollars, who's getting the checks? It's Facebook, Amazon, Google, and the mega tech companies that are paying zero or near zero in taxes. Do you see the game, Iowa? We're getting sucked dry, and it's up to you all to change it. Jeff Bezos is worth $115 billion post-divorce. This is a statement of fact. There's no judgment there. Do we think it's acceptable that his trillion-dollar tech company pays less in taxes than everyone here in this room? No. And that's not their fault. That is our fault, that we are so dumb that we're letting them run circles around us. That's what you all need to change. This is what rewriting the rules to work for us means. If we give our people our tiny fair share of every Amazon sale, every Google search, every Facebook ad, eventually every robot truck mile and AI work unit, we can easily afford $1,000 a month for every American in the country. Particularly because when this money is in your hands, how are you going to spend it? Where will it go?
Wherever we want.
How much of it would stay right here in Iowa?
Most of it.
Most of it. A little bit of it would float up to the cloud. Some of you would get your own Netflix password. But most of it would go right into your communities, to car repairs you've been putting off, and daycare expenses, and Little League signups, and local nonprofits, and religious organizations. This is the trickle-up economy from our people, our families, and our communities up. And this is the vision that you can take to the rest of the country and make real in 30 short days. Right now, we're getting all these pieces of news about how great things are in our economy. We're seeing, and you're shaking your head, sir. You're like, oh, no. Oh, no, but you're getting the news. You're saying record high stock market prices, record high GDP, headline unemployment is at multi-decade lows. And then you're looking around saying, if things are so great, why don't I feel like they're great in my communities? And as usual, you are right. Americans are very smart. Record high corporate profits in this country right now. You know what also are at record highs? Mental health, mental illness, stress, anxiety, financial insecurity, student loan indebtedness, suicides, drug overdoses, all at record highs in the United States of America. Again, corporate profits are heading up and our people are dying sooner. Which is more important? What we have to do is we have to redefine economic progress to include how we are doing. And for me, this is personal because Evelyn has been at home with our boys for the last number of years. Our older son, Christopher, is autistic. How much is her work valued at in our economic measurements every day? Zero. And it's not just her and stay-at-home parents around the country. It's caregivers, nurturers, coaches, mentors, volunteers, artists, journalists, increasingly. Over 2,000 local papers have gone out of business, turning much of the country into local news deserts. These are the things that we're supposed to value most dearly, but the market is zeroing them out, one by one. And Evelyn and I talked about this months ago. She said, how is it that something that was so mainstream in the 60s and 70s seems so dramatic and far out today? And what I said to her, and I'll say to you right now, is that over the last 50 years, we have become collectively conditioned, even brainwashed, to think that economic value and human value are the same things. And they are not. The case that you all have to make to the rest of the country is that we all have intrinsic value as human beings, as citizens, and as Americans. That if the market says someone like our son has no value, we know that's nonsense. And we can decide differently. We must decide differently because the market is going to turn on more and more of us as technology gets better and better. I have friends who are some of the most senior technologists in the country. And they say to me, I have been to the labs, I have seen what AI can do, and when it comes out of the labs and starts hitting our businesses, it's going to be much, much more disruptive than anyone knows. You know how that conversation never goes? I have been in the lab, I have seen what's coming, and everything's going to be fine. It's always, if people knew what I knew and saw what I saw, they would be much more concerned. I spoke to a group of 70 CEOs in New York City, and I asked how many of them were looking at replacing their back office clerical workers with software and artificial intelligence. Guess how many hands went up out of 70?
70.
All 70. All 70 hands went up. The truth is you could fire any CEO that did not have his hand up. And it was generally guys. It was. That is the system we have built, Iowa. We have built a system that is built to optimize the bottom line of these corporations. And the bottom line of these corporations in our communities are now separating. We have to line them up as quickly as possible. We have to actually start measuring our economy. It's the Russians, they cut me off.
Amen, brother.
They're always out to get my voice amplification. I think they can hear me.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Wait, Conrad's gonna fix it. We got an alternate mic. Look at this. They never knew we had a redundancy. Thank you. All right, all right. Instead of measuring just corporate profits and GDP, we should be measuring our progress with our own wellness and life expectancy, the proportion of Americans that can retire in quality circumstances, and this $1,000 a month I'm championing goes on top of Social Security. It would enable millions of Americans to retire with dignity. I have parents too. They're my dad's about to turn 80, my mom's in her mid-70s, and I see what happens as we all get older. We have this fixed income that doesn't move, and then things just seem to get more and more expensive over time. We can change that. If we measure our progress by how our elderly Americans are retiring, how our kids are doing, how about mental health and freedom from substance abuse? How about clean air and clean water? These can be the measurements of our economic progress, and as your president, it will be my privilege to go to the Bureau of Economic Analysis and say, hey, GDP, 100 years old, really out of date, kind of useless. Even the inventor of GDP said 100 years ago, this is a terrible measurement for national well-being, and we should never use it as that. And here we are 100 years later, following it off a cliff. A lot of these technologies will be great for GDP and corporate profits, but they'll be very bad for many of us. So this is how we change it. This is how we rewrite the rules of the 21st century economy to work for ourselves. I'm not running for president because I fantasized about being president. I think Evelyn can vouch for that. I'm running for president because I have seen the future that lies ahead for our kids, for your kids, and it is not something I'm willing to accept. We have to leave a future we're actually proud of for them. If you were born in this country in the 1940s, first, congratulations, because that's pretty good already. You're like in your mid-70s. But if you were born in the 1940s in the United States, there was a 93% chance that you were going to do better than your parents did. That's the American dream that brought my family here, that brought Evelyn's family here, that has worked for so long. If you were born in the 1990s, you're down to a 50-50 shot, and it's declining quickly. That is that feeling that we have that our kids' future is not going to be as bright as the lives we've led. That is the feeling that got Donald Trump into the White House. And that is what you all must change in 30 short days. We can only do it with your help. We need you to caucus for this campaign in 30 days. We need you to bug your equally superpowered Iowan friends, who are all also worth 1,000 Californians each, to get out on February 3rd. But we can make that case loud and clear to the rest of the country, and that message will take off like wildfire because they are waiting for it. So many of our fellow Americans understand that the feedback mechanism between us and our government has been broken, and we need to restore it. That's the message that you all can send. Donald Trump is our president today because he had a very simple message. He said he was going to make America great again. What did Hillary Clinton say in response?
Nothing.
America's already great.
America is already great. You all remember that?
Yeah.
It's been a long 3 years, I know. It's about to end. Her response did not go over well because the problems are real. We have to acknowledge their reality and severity and depth, but then we need real solutions that will actually move the country forward. What were Donald Trump's solutions? Build a wall, turn the clock back, bring the old jobs back. Iowa, you know we have to do the opposite of these things. We have to turn the clock forward. We have to accelerate our economy and society to rise to the real challenges of the 21st century. We have to evolve in the way we think about ourselves and our work and our value. I am the ideal candidate for this job because the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian man who likes math. Thank you very much, Burlington. You may not know this, but math is an acronym, and what does it stand for? Make America think harder. Make America think harder. That's right, Burlington. That is your job. It is your job to move this country, not left, not right, but forward. 30 days, and I know that's just what you'll do. Thank you very much, Iowa.